Okay, okay, let's begin. Only a couple here, but let's not waste any time. Hare Krishna, let's begin. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastai Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Puchanine Nivasisha Sundivari Pashtatara Satanine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Okay, let me share the screen as per usual, and we're going to share. We have Bhagavatamrta. Okay, and I spent a few minutes beforehand just making sure we're beginning from where we left off last week. Now, last week we actually stopped in mid-purple to this specific verse here. It's quite a long purple. So I thought there's no harm in just reading the purple again. So we got some context of what it's all about. So I hope that's okay. We got through 3/4 of the purple. So what I'll do, I'm gonna have a read to begin with. Gonna read the first and go through this. Then not many here as yet. I think Chandravali's busy today with family, so she won't be here. But please, you're welcome to read. I'm just going to read this one here. Okay, we're ready?
Prabhu, what page 422 is it?
Well, the hard copy, I don't know what page you're going to, but here it's you want the verse number and the chapter. It's part 2, chapter 2, text 179.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, we generally read the English here or the translation. Okay. Contrary natures, like having qualities and no qualities, conjoin in him. Since impersonal Brahman is an infinite opulence of the personality of Godhead, the difference between him and Brahman is well established. Okay, that's quite technical to begin with. But basically what's being described is that there is an impersonal Brahman, as well as the Para-Brahman, the Supreme Person himself. So we do not deny the impersonal Brahman. It is there, but there is a difference, and that's what's going to be explained here. There is a difference between Para-Brahman and Brahman in itself, although from another aspect they are non-different. Okay, so let's see if we can understand this. As rivers merge into an ocean, many opposite qualities converge in the Supreme Person. Yeah. The word Adi after Sagunatva and Agunatva indicates more opposites: detachment and association, changelessness and change, inactivity and endeavor, oneness and multiplicity, non-duality and pacific qualities. Conceived as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme is devoid of qualities and other dualities. Conceived as Paramatma and Parameshvara, the Supreme displays characteristics such as having relationships with other living beings, possessing wonderful qualities, and so on. Thus, in truth, the Supreme is full of qualities, many of them apparently contradictory. Sastra may sometimes say that the Supreme cannot be described in words and that he has no name, but the literal construction of these statements is refuted by the Vasudevadhyatma. So we're following so far. You might have heard it said that the Lord simultaneously has walks and does not walk. You sure you've heard that type of thing? He has hands and he has no hands. may seem quite a mystery to understand what's been described, but there's two aspects to God. Or actually, there's three. There's Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So at the moment we're hearing about Bhagavan and Brahman. Quote, because his qualities are not well known, he is said to have no name. And because his form is not material, he is said to have no form. So that's qualifying that, okay? He does not have a material form, but he has a spiritual form. Mayavadis argue that the personality of Godhead may have qualities, but as products of Maya, those qualities are illusory. That's what Mayavadis, that's a classic Mayavadi, that Krishna's qualities are part of Maya. We don't like to even hear such things, but that's what they say. Thus, they want to reconcile his having qualities with the idea of reality, that the Supreme actually has no qualities. Let's let someone in the front door. Someone's coming in. Okay. No Jambavatis just joining. In fact, however, the Supreme... Oh, Manomohini is coming as well. Yeah. In fact, however, the supreme powers of the absolute truth are eternal and real, not illusory like the material creation. And therefore, when the personal feature of the Supreme Bhagavan is said to be nirguna, anyone can say what nirguna means? You might have come across this word.
Without qualities?
Correct, yeah. Guna means qualities, so nirguna. Often an impersonalist or Mayavadi will describe God as, or the concept of Brahman as being nirguna. But the point here is, he has no material qualities, but he does have spiritual qualities which are eternal. It is said to be, Bhagavan is said to be nirguna like Brahman. The sense is different, namely that Bhagavan transcends all material qualities. At the same time, like the material world, he has many different qualities, and so he is also said to be saguna, nirguna or saguna, which means he has quality. This seems contradictory, but it is possible by his inconceivable, amazing potencies. The Supreme Person is indeed Mahimanava, the ocean in which all perfections converge. This is confirmed in many sastras. In the words of the Moksha Dharma, Mahabharat Shantipava said, quote, O ruler of the people, whatever you see in this world in connection with material bodies of the living entities, whatever you see composed of the 5 elements born from the intelligence of the Supreme Lord, know all that to be the Supreme Lord himself, both possessing qualities and having none. He is the ultimate element of all creation, the Supreme Master, the body of the universe, Lord Narayan. Try to understand him to be the inner self of all creatures. Okay, everyone's still with us? Yes, I presume, yes, Hare Krishna. In the Kurma Purana, he is neither large nor infinitesimal, yet he is larger and smaller than everything else. He is said to be devoid of color, yet he is dark blue, and the corners of his eyes are reddish. By the play of his personal powers, the Supreme Lord is known by contradictory designations. Yet he is the Supreme, and fault should never be ascribed to him. In him, all contrary qualities combine. All qualities join together in the Supreme Person by virtue of his transcendental powers, yet no faults ever enter him, for he is the Absolute. Some persons who are not truly learned say that good qualities and faults exist in the Supreme Lord by the force of Maya, but in him there is no Maya, nor any agent who could possess Maya. How then could he have illusory good qualities and faults that Maya could produce? The opulences of the Supreme Lord are not therefore generated by the force of illusion. The Lord transcends Maya, and so he is known as the Supreme. All this will be more elaborately explained later on. Although impersonal Brahman and the personality of Godhead are but different conceptions of the same absolute truth, some think otherwise. They think that Brahman, the Lord's formless aspect worshipped by the yogis, is one entity, and that his form possessing personal qualities and worshipped by his devotees is a different entity. But although the Mayavadis think that Sagun Brahman is not real as Nirgun Brahman, they still have to admit that the Saguna aspect of the Supreme is the concentrated eternal essence of pure existence, Suddha-sattva. Therefore, even in their opinion, the Saguna form of the Lord is superior to everything else that has form. Any questions or confusions? Yeah, something came to mind I was going to mention, but just what was that? Yeah, yeah. But although Mayavadis think that Sugun Brahma is not as real as a Nirgun Brahma, they still have to admit. Yeah, that's what often a presentation, for instance, of Shankaracharya, his presentation is one of admittance of Krishna as being above the material or being transcendental, in that, and he's situated in Suddha-sattva. So some aspects or some strains of Mayavad philosophy, philosophers generally come in line with Shankaracharya. That's what they posit, or they explain. Yes, Krishna is above matter, and he's situated in Suddha-sattva. But then they will go on to, with word jugglery, we'll go on to explain that aspect of Suddha-sattva also to be Maya. It gets quite complicated, or they make it quite complicated. Can anyone cite a pastime where Lord Chaitanya is speaking to a Mayavadi, or Mayavadi speaking to him, and he mentions this point that the Vedanta Sutra is very clear in establishing Krishna, but what you have said is all very complicated, and I cannot understand it. Where otherwise in the Vedas it's very clear.
Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya?
Correct. Yes. Well done, Maharaj Kishore. That's a discussion with Lord Chaitanya Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and he gives the example of the sun. He says the Vedas are just like the sun. It's very clear. What's the need for all this word jugglery? You know, but that's what they do, and they're quite expert at it as well. They can lead you down the garden path with their different Sanskrit, or the different kind of Sanskrit grammar and the meanings of grammar. So, but of course, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya could not, in any way, shape, or form, bewilder the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How long was Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu listening to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya? You can hazard a guess. A year? No.
Was it 15 days?
Something like, I heard 7 days, something like that, 15 days. And Lord Chaitanya didn't say anything. It was just, he was just hearing. And then at the end, Sarvabhauma got a bit agitated. Why you not give any comment? Why you not say anything? And actually, it's not, sometimes it's presented that he just sat there for 7 days and nights, like Maharaj Parikshit heard Bhagavatam. But no, he didn't. He would hear, they would do their morning oblations, do their, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya would do his rituals, his oblations and his purifications in the morning, and then they would meet and discuss, just like a class, because there's other students here as well. And at the end of the day, they would disperse and go their own ways, and they would then get together the next day. That continued for 7 days. And wonderful discussion. Anyway, so continuing. Again, any questions or confusions, we can try and explain, That personal form is realized by the Lord's unalloyed devotees, but remains invisible to persons striving to realize impersonal Brahman. In addition, the personal aspect of the Supreme has special, unique excellencies, such as he's distributing the topmost ecstasy of prema. How the Lord selectively reveals himself is shown in the narrative in the Sri Narayaniya of the Moksha Dharma, where Uparichara Vasu performs a sacrifice in which he, but not Brihaspati and others, is able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, accepting his share of the offerings. Okay, so some could see and some could not see. So they see according to their qualification. So that's how you see Krishna, by qualification. There's one story, a nice story that one Prabhupada disciple often tells. He's a Scottish devotee. What's his name? I forget his name, but when I was in Scotland, he was there. He told a story I've heard him say before, but each time he explains it, it's very wonderful. This was in Berry Place. I'll just paraphrase him. And one lady challenged Prabhupada. Have you seen God? Have you seen God? I've heard it. Can you see God? Can you see God? It's like a challenge, and the whole room went quiet. And Prabhupada just matter-of-factly said, yes, I have seen God. I am seeing God. Then it went quiet. And then Prabhupada went immediately back to her in perfect timing. Have you seen God? And she started to shuffle around quite awkward, because Prabhupada, when he said, I've seen God, it was so matter of fact and convincing to everybody there. He said it was so much gravity that everyone understood he was seeing God. And that made her feel a little bit uncomfortable with the potency. Prabhupada responded. And then he went back to her, have you seen God? Then it all went quiet and everyone turned towards her. And again, she was a bit unnerved about that question being asked in front of everyone. And she embarrassedly said, no. And then Prabhupada shot back, do you want to see God? Tell me, do you want to see God? And obviously she didn't. She didn't have much of a desire to see God. And that became very apparent. And the way this devotee describes it, was such a powerful exchange. You can't see, if you don't want to see God, then you will not see him. It's quite. Anyone know the name of that Scottish Prabhupada disciple? No. Might come to mind in a minute. Anyone heard that story before? Silence means no, I guess.
No, Prabhuji, I have not heard.
Okay.
No.
Oh, Nelly, anyway, his name. Anyway, let's continue. Where was we? Yeah, down here, yeah. He's able to see, except, so we're down the bottom here, yeah, just here, yeah, sorry, we're just here, yeah. Except in his share of the, another vivid example appears in the history of Brahma's sons, Ekata, Dvita, and Trita, all great yogis who went to Sweetadweep to see the Supreme Lord. Even after intense endeavor, they were unable to have his audience. But although Sri Sanaka and his brothers were constantly perceiving Brahman and were the most elevated of self-contented sages, when they visited Vaikuntha, they did not see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the ecstasy they felt was so powerful. Oh, did they? No, excuse me. When they visited Sri Vaikuntha, they did see the Personality of Godhead, and the ecstasy they felt was so powerful that various transformations became manifest in them. This same instant is described in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we've read this verse before in these readings. Okay, Rajkishore had to leave. Can anyone, I think Madhvraj Kishore has just left, but I think she answered this last time. This verse here, Tashara Vinda, Narayanasya Padada Vinda, Kinjauki Mishya Tulosa Makaranda Vayu, Andagata Shva Vivarena Chakar Shesham, Shankshobam Akshra Justam Api Chatur Tanvo. When the breeze carrying the aroma of the tulsi leaves from the toes of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead enter the nostrils of those sages, they experience a change in both body and mind, even though they were attached to the impersonal Brahman understanding. So where's this pastime from? It's quite easy because it's mentioned the sages. Going once, going twice. So the name's just been given, Sanaka, of the 4 Kumaras. So this verse is about them. Can anyone say the pastime of why, of where, of what's the context of this verse? Have a guess.
Is that when they went to the gates of Vaikuntha?
Yes,
Or-
that's it. Yeah, that's it. Quite easy. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They went to the gates of Vaikuntha, and there was a bit of a kerfuffle there. They because they didn't have tickets to enter, and they was under 18 years of age. So the 2 gatekeepers didn't want to let them in. They couldn't prove they was over 18. Not exactly like that. So then this verse is then mentioned there, where this is where they became converted from Brahmavadis to Bhaktas. Yeah. The conclusion is that the Supreme's features of Brahman and the Jiva's soul are 2 of the personality of Godhead's opulent expansions, as many authoritative sources confirm. Yeah, so we are expansions of Krishna. Vibhinimamsa. Yeah, actually. And we have a tendency, what's another name for our tattva? Vibhinimamsa, and you can say sometimes overcome by...
Swamsa?
Sorry?
The Swamsa and Vibhinis.
Yeah, Swamsa and we are Vibhinimamsa. That's us, the jivas, but there's another word that's described the jiva. Meaning sometimes in Maya and sometimes not.
Tatastha Shakti.
That's it, Tatastha Shakti. Yeah. Tatastha Shakti. So we are not Swamsa. Therefore, we are Tatastha. So we have a tendency to be overwhelmed by the illusory energy. Yeah. So we are marginal. We are Tatastha. Although we are, it's described here, we are expansions, but specific type of expansion that often gets things wrong. Unfortunately, we see something for real what is not real, and we have to pay the price for it. Being in a material world, that's until we achieve perfectional stages. All right. So remember, it's good to remember these terms because you come across them when you're reading Prabhupada's books, and it kind of helps. For example, according to one saying by saintly devotees, Parat Param Brahma Cha Tet Vibhutayaha. The Supreme Truth Brahman is also one of your vibhutis, O Lord. So vibhuti means? Sorry for asking you the question. Sorry?
I don't know, Vibhuti, energies,
Yeah, that's it.
expansions.
Yeah, vibhutis, his shaktis or his energies. And there's a Bhagavad Gita, the opulences, it's the laws opulences, and Bhagavad Gita chapter is called the opulences of the Absolute. It's also known as Vibhuti Yoga. Yeah, so one of the energies. So Brahman is one of the energies of Krishna, which there is many. O Lord, in Bhagavad Gita, here it is. O Lord, in Bhagavad Gita 10:20, Shri Krishna includes the soul as one of his vibhutis. Aham Atma Godakesha Shavabhutasya Stitaha. O conqueror of sleep, I am the soul situated in the hearts of all living beings. So he's the soul of our soul. Yeah. The very essence of us, over and above the body, is the soul. But the very essence of us, the soul, is actually Krishna. He's situated in the core of our heart. Sri Brahma Samhita also states, I worship the primeval Lord who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is impersonal Brahman, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. In other words, Brahman is the Supreme Person's partial expansion, and as stated elsewhere. Those who blaspheme the Supreme Soul go to the darkness that has no beginning or end. Well, the Jiva soul is subordinate, bound, weak, full of faults. Okay, this is us. Bound, weak, full of faults, and absorbed in a very insignificant awareness of enjoyment. Yeah, but the Supreme has just the opposite qualities. What wickedness does one not commit by saying that the Jiva soul and the Supreme Soul are the same? When fools and rascals read scriptural statements that describe the oneness of the soul and the super soul, they become bewildered. These statements inspire them to tell one another, I am you, and you are me, my own self. Om Namo Narayanaya, you are Narayan, I am Narayan, we are Narayan. The Rudra Narayan, Prabhupada would often speak against this term, the Rudra Narayan, as a spec. Anyone knows what Rudra Narayan means?
It means that Krishna or God appears as a poor person.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Prabhupada, he didn't spare any criticism of this speculation. So in other words, everyone is God, everyone is Narayan. The poor beggar on the street is also Narayan. And they're trying to, into some type of sentimental, some philanthropic, sentimental speculation, that everyone is Narayan. So on that basis, they would try and treat everyone equally, which is good in that sense. But to declare everyone as being Narayan, according to here, they are fools and rascals. But actually, the Supreme Person is the indwelling regulator, the soul within everyone, and so he is different from the individual soul. In this way, demons are bewildered by statements intended to confuse them. So these statements are intended to confuse them, and that bewilderment is pleasing to the demigods and to the Supreme Lord Himself. Or thinking that the soul and the super soul are one and the same, the demons go to the hell called Mahanda Tamas. Wow. So yeah, so that's the result one has to pay for equating the Jiva and the Lord to be one. It's quite stated here quite clearly that they go to hell. That's the destination of Mayavadis. Anyway, any questions or comments on this? Or we've been commenting as we've been going to try and understand that long purple. But if there's anything to add, then please feel free. If not, we can read on.
I was wondering, so how come Mayavadis go to hell when, I mean, apart from their belief, they still practice, they live in the mode of goodness mostly?
Yeah, it's interesting. You could say they lead a regulated life. They practice austerities. But that is, in one sense, that's there. But the Mayavad, this conception is so erroneous and so catastrophic for a soul to take on that philosophy it is actually the antithesis of devotion to consider oneself to be God or God to be oneself. Then there cannot be any expression of love, devotion, affection, or service. So it goes against the very grain. You know, it's really catastrophic for someone to take on this philosophy. So the results are, it's here, it's quite, so regardless of what they may be doing in their own personal conduct, as far as sadhana goes, the very fact that they putting forward or propounding such a philosophy. I think Prabhupada says elsewhere, actually Prabhupada says in purports that Mayavads go to hell. Of course, hell is not, you know, they stay there for some time. It's not like the Christian concept or misconception. That's one thing comes to mind. Anything on that? Mahananda Tamas. Now, there's probably a description of what that is like. Mahanda Tamas specific, what they have to go through. So yeah, it's quite strong. It's quite strong, isn't it? It's quite stringent, because it is the antithesis of devotion, the opposite. And now we're going to hear about devotion. Now come up in the next verse. You know, this will be like a rain cloud of bliss reading this after reading all that. Okay, someone like to read? Any other comments?
Can I share a little bit regarding to, it's a little bit regarding, but actually I had a meeting with my girls, Minty, and one girl, she said in her dream, one devotee came saying, release me, my heart, release me. My heart is hot, I cannot go back to Godhead. And she knew this devotee. She looked on Facebook what happened. He's from Ukraine, he ran to, escaped to America now, and he had heart attack. He's in hospital, near to death or whatever. And she said, I realized what's happened, but he's nearly to death. He was very correct devotee. He was practically correct. Kirtana, Harinam, festivals, everything. But he was very harsh with devotees. He was very harsh. And that what happened. And he was very harsh to her as well. I don't want to get into details, but, and she said he came asking in her dream that release me. I can't move back. I cannot do.
Wow.
So,
hopefully,
so you see what is. We can be very correct devotees, but if we are harsh on devotees, if we don't respect, we can't talk about any bhava, we cannot talk about any spiritual advancement, we can't talk about anything at all, because Krishna doesn't want us. He doesn't want to listen. Like Dhruva Maharaj, asked, like Krishna said, my heart is from Varish Maharaj. I don't have heart. Krishna has no heart. His heart is with devotees. So it's the same. We can't beg mercy of Krishna. We cannot develop any quality. So it moved. Yeah, it moved my heart very much, because we have to be very careful. First, sensitivity, how we're dealing with devotees, and then we can move forward. Sorry, but I thought I had to share this.
No, thank you. It's kind of quite sobering to hear. So the correlation, like the results of the Mayavad is quite severe, but we should also be careful as well, as Mother Jambavati's sharing. Yeah, that may be the case. Yeah, so we should be sweet with the devotees. Otherwise, there will be a reaction, and it may not be. There will be a reaction. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Hopefully, she found in her heart to forgive him, to help him to move on. Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, I remember, I won't go into too many details. I remember many years ago when Keshava, I think I mentioned this in a class some time back, where I was not being so pleasant with the devotees, you know. I can't remember the details, but I think I was struggling a bit, you know, finding your austerities of traveling Sankirtan a bit difficult. like that. I can't remember the details. But Keshavarti Maharaj just told me 3 words. They just said, no, 3 words. He didn't have to say anything else. He said, be sweet with devotees. Or that's 4 words. Be sweet with devotees. I understood from those 4 words what I had to do. Yeah. Yeah, and Jambavati was nicely quoting this verse, the Lord is within the heart, and the devotees are in the Lord's heart. And so go, devotees in the Lord's heart, and the Lord is in the devotee's heart. Yes, thank you. All right, let's read this next verse, 180. We need a reader. Mother
Can we
Guy.
read, Prabhu?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, nicely. Very good.
Text 180. His 2 beautiful lotus feet, therefore, embody the concentrated essence of happiness. Those who realize him through pure devotion surely attain that intense bliss. Commentary. The happiness of the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is much greater than the happiness of persons who meditate on impersonal Brahman. The 2 lotus feet of the Personality of Godhead are Srimat, endowed with all splendor. As the sage Parashara explains in the Vishnu Purana, just as the light of a fire situated in one place spreads in every direction, the energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman, spread all over the universe. And Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 14:27, Brahmana hi pratishtaham, amritasya vyayasya cha. I am the foundation of Brahman, the immortal and infallible. The Supreme Lord's lotus feet are pure spirit, perfect in eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Their effulgence is like the combined radiance of the sun and moon, and the worshippers of those feet naturally relish intense pleasure. In contrast, the pleasure of realizing the Brahman feature of the Supreme is minuscule. The jivas are of the nature of this Brahman, and even though the individual effulgence of each of them is small, because the jivas are found everywhere, their combined effulgence pervades the entire universe. The pleasure of realizing Brahman and the jiva is not material, but it is inferior to the bliss gained by realizing the lotus feet of the Lord. The individual jivas may be compared to solar and lunar rays. The atomic quanta of light shining forth from the sun and moon are expansions of the sun and moon and non-different from them. But although the rays of the sun and moon have many sun-like and moon-like qualities, such as brilliance, the rays each bear but a small part of solar and lunar power. All this notwithstanding, when we compare both Brahman and the jivas with the material cosmos, we find that matter is not Satchit Ananda, and so, properly speaking, matter is not an amsha, non-different part of Parabrahman, but is one of his Shakti's energies. Should I continue?
Yeah, unless there's any questions or comments on that. Yeah, so yeah, there is the energies of the Lord, which are directly like the Vishnu Tattva is the Lord himself. Then there's his expansions, and then there's parts of the expansions, and then there's his energies. Anyway, like that. Yeah, any questions or comments? If not, we can read on. Speak. Yeah, go ahead.
Text 181. The 2 feet of Sri Krishna are considered like a piece of sugar because they are joyful and are a source of all joy. Brahman, however, is only joyful. Commentary. Lord Krishna's lotus feet are sukha-rupa, the essence of joy itself, and sukha-adhara, the object of love in which his devotees taste countless varieties of joy. His feet are like a sugar lump, which is in essence nothing but sweetness, but is also a particular object that supplies sweetness. Brahman, in its essence, is bliss, but Brahman cannot be considered a source of bliss, because that would involve a duality, a difference between Brahman and its bliss. By definition, after all, Brahman is supposed to be free of duality. The concept of the personality of Godhead, however, is not limited in that way. He is the fathomless reservoir of wonders, deeper than millions of oceans. Just as various rivers enter an ocean, many contrary qualities like oneness and duality enter and mingle within him.
All right. Anyone heard that before? Krishna's feet compared to sugar cubes, sugar lumps.
Yes, heard it.
You heard that? Yeah, I haven't heard that before. Sugar lump is compared to a sugar lump.
Very
A
sweet.
lump of sugar, very sweet. Yeah. So that's the problem when it comes to Brahman, is that it's not even worth speaking about it. Because as soon as you start to describe it, or start to describe its manifestation, then you bring in duality. That's what I think it's saying here. You bring in he got for Krishna, everything is absolute. Let's read this. His feet are like a sugar lump. So all sweetness, actually, if anything is sweet, the concept of sweetness, wherever it may be, has its origin in Krishna. So sugar is sweet because Krishna is sweet. Yeah. Honey is sweet because Krishna is sweet. He's the essence of all sweetness. That I think Vamsivat was speaking on that in his class he gave. Yeah. So Brahman cannot be considered a source of bliss. So that involves, you understand? So you got Brahman and then you got bliss. So there's two there. There's two. There is duality. But Brahman, there cannot be any discussion of anything. There is no difference. It's all one. But it's interesting. It says the Brahman, however, is only joyful. Because sometimes the Brahman aspect of Krishna is considered it's not the Haladini potency. But here it's mentioned that Brahman is only joyful. Can anyone perhaps explain that? Might be a bit technical. Why is Brahman being described as joyful? Because mainly we hear Brahman, not only the Haladini Shakti gives joy, not the impersonal Brahman. Bit of a testing question for you. Well, often if it is described as joyful, it's because there is no modes of material nature. It's like someone who is now out of prison, and compared to prison, they're in a liberated state. So because of what they are free from, the dualities of the world, there is an experience of joy. But as we've just heard described, that joy doesn't compare in any way to the joy of pure devotion. Yeah, so it's not the joy of the Haladini Shakti. It's just the joy a prisoner experiences when they're free from prison. But he will really experience joy when he starts to interact with people outside prison. And he can go to the park, he can, go on a lake, he can go on a holiday, he can, if he's got the money. That's when he really starts to experience the joy of being free, is when he engages with the free world, not just by being free itself. You follow? I think that's what's indicated here. Okay. Let's read some more, shall we? Unless there's any questions or comments. You can read another verse, Mother Gaia.
Text 182. If the identity of the jiva, the individual self, were the same as that of the Supreme Brahman, then the jiva would be the full embodiment of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. He would be the personality of Godhead himself. Commentary. Some philosophers think that God is nothing else than impersonal Brahman, which pervades the creation with consciousness, like the moon illuminating the sky with its rays. These philosophers may even take support from their idea from Srimad Bhagavatam 1-11, in which it is said, Prameti Paramatmeti,
Bhagavan iti
Bhagavan iti sabdite.
Yeah.
The same one absolute is called Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. But this impersonal view does not allow the conscious self, the jiva, any real individual existence apart from Brahman. And as the Bhakti Shastras explain in texts 182 through 188, not much happiness can be derived from the so-called liberation of identifying the jiva with Brahman, the Supreme.
Yeah. Okay. So something came to mind. It just, I forgot the. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, something came to mind as reading, but I forgot. Is this clear? Kind of, I guess when you speak about Brahman, then nothing's clear. It's all very difficult to kind of trying to conceive of what they identify as being Brahman. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anyone else like to read? Text 183.
I can read.
Go ahead.
I can read.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Text 183. But the jivas are recognized as integral parts of the personality of Godhead. They are like the network of light that shines forth from the dense mass of light called the sun. Commentary. Parasa and other saintly authorities are of the opinion that the jivas are small, partial expansions of the Supreme Person. He is the Ghana Tejas, the dense source of light, and they are small particles of light spreading out from him. Because there are so many jivas, they pervade the entire universe, just as rays from the sun provide light and heat for the entire universe, even though the sun globe is in one place far away.
Yeah, I just remembered what I just was going to say. I was reading, I forget where I was reading it from, but it was descriptions of Brahman, and from the impersonal point of view. And it said like the jiva is like a slice of the sky. You take a slice out the sky, and that's like the jiva. But when he achieves moksha, then he no longer is a slice, but he is the sky. Yeah, very. It sounds intriguing, but basically what they're saying is nonsense. It's kind of word jugglery, you know. They juggle words. It may sound very attractive. I think I said this before. Like even yourselves, you can juggle words. I can say that the oneness is contained within the completeness that is the emptiness of the world, which is the stillness that resides within, which is the same as that which resides without. I just making up words.
Yeah, it sounds very intriguing for somebody who's wants something spiritual in their life. It sounds intriguing, and then they can meditate on that, but they never get anywhere.
Yeah, that's it. You know, they still go down the pub. Their life doesn't change, you know, whatever they do, you know.
Yeah.
But you can do, I can say another one, like the quietness that exists within the stillness of the ocean, of the nothingness, that is completeness of the all-pervasiveness of the all-pervading oneness. I'm just juggling words.
Oh, you just made that up?
Yeah, I'm just making up. You can have a go, you know. You see, you know, the oneness is contained within the stillness that is contained within the quietness of the universe, which resides within and also without. Perhaps I could write a book on this. I could write a book. And people go, wow.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, you can carry on with it. Any comments on that? Questions? Yeah.
No.
Yes.
In relation to the Supreme Lord, the eternally existing jivas are distinct, like the rays of the sun, the sparks of a fire, or the waves of an ocean. Commentary. Someone may propose that the jivas appear distinct and many by the power of illusion, an illusion dispelled when liberation is achieved, and only pure non-difference remains. This idea is refuted in this verse and the next. Those who acknowledge that all of the Lord's energies are real look upon the jivas not as illusions created by Maya, but as separated expansions of the Supreme Brahman, each with its own autonomous existence.
Yeah, there's the verse from the Bhagavad Gita, Mayam so jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana. We all know that verse, that the living entities are my eternal parts and parcels. Jiva Goswami often quotes that verse to refute the Mayavad philosophy. Mamavam sa jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatana, that the living entities are my eternal parts and parts. And it might come up, actually. You can continue, Mo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the Supreme Lord's eternally existing potency called Mahayoga, who is an aspect of his spiritual splendor, these jivas always stand separate from him. Commentary. If the illusory Maya does not create duality, then from where does it arise? It arises from the Supreme Lord's personal energy, who has always been acting on his behalf. By that energy, the jivas have their separate existence, not as an illusion, but in fact. Furthermore, since the power that maintains the separate identities of the jivas is an eternal energy of the Lord, the jivas themselves are also eternal. That energy is called Mahayoga or Yogamaya, meaning that she can make the impossible possible, as she does when she manifests the distinction between the whole and its parts of the indivisible Supreme. She is an expansion of the Lord's internal energy, and thus she is not a creator of unreality. Shri Krishna describes her in Bhagavad Gita 7:25. Naham prakasa, sarvasya yogamaya samavrita. I am.
No, excuse me. Oh.
I am not manifest to everyone, for I am covered by my Yogamaya.
Yeah. So now the details of the Lord Shaktis are being kind of explained. That's how we exist as being parts and parcels. It's by the Lord's described external energy called Maha Yoga or Yoga Maya. Yep. Yeah. You can just read till 7 o'clock, just 5 minutes left. You can.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments?
Yogamaya is
Yeah, let's get this right. Yeah.
It says the jivas are covered by, what are the jivas covered by? By Yogamaya?
Yeah, well, the Maha, well, there's two. There's the Yoga Maya. That's where, for instance, the residents of Raj, they're in Maya. They're in Yoga Maya because they
Yes.
consider Krishna to be just their bosom chum, their her son. That's Yoga Maya. Where Mahamaya is the effect of the illusory potency, which causes one to be bound in the material world. It's the same energy, but acting in different ways. Just as the electric energy can either heat an oven or cool a fridge. It's the same energy. So yoga, if I've got that correct.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the jivas are usually covered by Mahamaya.
Mahamaya, yeah.
Yeah. So is it Prince Kunti who prays to please remove your glaring effulgence?
Yeah, I think she mentions words to those effect, but the specific verses you might be thinking of is in the Ishopanishad.
Yeah.
Described there, specific, please, my Lord, please remember all that I have done for you, and please remove your effulgence so I can see you.
So is she talking about that effulgence is the impersonal energy, or is it Mahamaya?
Yeah, you could say it's the Brahman, it's the impersonal energy as far as I've understood. Please remove that glaring light. Please remove that glaring effulgence. So we can also take it to mean, please remove the illusions of the material world. But it seems to indicate the Brahman. Please let me go beyond that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Yoga Maya, it reveals the Lord, and it also hides the Lord. Yeah, Yogamaya plays that role. It reveals the Lord, because sometimes devotees, there's many stories, isn't it, of the Lord appearing to devotees, and they don't actually know it's the Lord. Yeah, and they may realize afterwards. So the Lord, so it's very powerful, because as though the devotees are hankering to see the Lord, like they're really pining and really feeling separation, and then the Lord may appear before them in such a way that they don't recognize him. And then only after he's gone do they realize that what was in front of them was the Lord himself. Then they go into a great ecstasy of meeting, they go into a great emotional ecstasy of seeing the Lord but not realizing, and then realizing he's gone. That was Madhavendra Puri, that happened to Bhuvamangala Thakur. So that's Yogamaya. Yeah. But the ordinary jiva who takes pleasure in watching cricket or football, who takes pleasures in the futile things of this material world, they're covered by Mahamaya. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, carry on, Marcus.
Yeah. Therefore, saintly authorities consider the jivas both different and non-different from the Supreme. As a rule, even when the jivas are liberated, the difference endures. Commentary. The jivas are non-different from Brahman in that they share with him the nature of being pure spirit, eternal, conscious, and blissful, simultaneously being parts of him and having other distinct qualities. They are different from him, as illustrated in the examples given in text 184. The parts of a whole, such as the rays of the sun, the sparks of a fire, and the waves of an ocean, are non-different from the whole, because they partake of the qualities of the whole, yet they differ from the whole by the virtue of being separate, many, and diminutive. The parts and the
Sorry. What long
The
purple?
parts and-
Anyway, let's finish. Let's have a quick look how long this purple is. Okay, we can read this purple. Can
Yeah.
continue.
the parts and the whole always remain separate. Thus, even Sri Sankaracharya has said, even the liberated accept new bodies as their pastime to worship the Supreme Lord. This idea is also consistent with the statements of the Mahapuranas and other scriptures. For example, Srimad Bhagavatam states, O great sage, among the many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Lord Narayan or Krishna. Such devotees who are fully peaceful are extremely rare. If upon attaining liberation a person were to marry as one with Brahman, who would remain to take on a new body for pastimes? Or what liberated soul would engage in bhakti as a devotee of Lord Narayana, having no individual existence separate from Brahman, would disallow the liberated soul from doing any of this? Nor can we explain away the cited statements by saying that they refer to persons who are jiva mukta, who have earned liberation but are still living in material bodies. Such persons already have bodies and therefore need not assume bodies for pastimes. The 6th canto verse cited above states that some liberated souls worship Narayana. The Kartika Mahatmya action of the Padma Purana tells of an advanced stage in a human body who merged into the Supreme Lord and then later obtained a form similar in appearance to that of Lord Narayana. Similarly, in a discourse about fasting on Nrsimha Chaturdasi, the Brihana Nrsimha Purana relates how a fallen Brahmana and a prostitute merged into the Supreme and then again took birth as Prahlad Maharaj and his wife. Many histories like these serve as evidence that the jiva continues in individual existence after liberation. Only as a concession does the current verse use the word praya as a general rule to indicate that in certain cases the Lord may, by his sweet will, allow someone to attain Sayuja.
So Yuja.
Sayuja.
The nirvana of entering the body.
Sayuja.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so sometimes, yeah, any questions here? Sometimes it may sit, there is like Sukha-rupa, for instance, when Krishna took his head off very dramatically, then it was seen that his soul hovered in the sky and then entered into the Lord's body. So someone may interpret, oh, oneness, he obtained oneness, but no, it was then he went there and then he went back as the gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. I think that's what's being described here. So in actuality, to actually lose your individuality and to merge into Brahman and lose your identity doesn't exist. That's why there's a verse that describes such liberation is via mukta maninas. It's just within the mind. Some persons may stay within the effulgence of the Lord and be like, and they enter into a state of kind of what's that word for someone he's in a coma. They're in a comatose position within the effulgence of the Lord. But eventually, because of the actual nature of the jiva, then you have to leave that place.
Suspended animation?
Yeah, that's another word. Just like suspended animation. Because the jiva is always the jiva, no matter what they try and do to try and destroy the jiva, or to try and imagine that they're trying to imagine. It must be difficult, isn't it, to try and imagine that you don't actually exist. Some people spend their whole life, they spend a good majority of their lifetime trying to convince themselves that actually they and no one else actually exists. It's like mind-boggling how they attempt to do that. Hare Krishna. Okay, let's pause there. Let's stop there. So thank you for joining us. So nice to read this, and a bit technical, but it's good. It's nice to read about the treasure of devotion, which we actually have. And by the grace of the Lord, we didn't take up the path of Mayavadi. We actually took the path of bhakti. So we're very blessed that we didn't go down the wrong road. We took the right turning. Haribol. Haribol. Okay, thank you, everyone. Next week, stay tuned. I'll be away next week, but I'll be away in New York, and it happens to be that 6 o'clock UK time is 1 p.m. New York time. So I might be able to pull off the classes, but I'll have to see when I actually get there. Let's see. If I cannot do it, then you'll have no problem. You're going to go straight into Lilamrita.
Lilamrita.
Yeah, and you'll have a great time. So you're not going to lose.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Grace Murli Prabhu ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Ram. Hare Ram. Ram Ram. Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.